low carbon heating. So yes, we've stopped the heat from getting out, but we've still got oil boilers or coal-fired fireplaces or whatever. So we want to change that. So basically, oil, coal, and gas all emit CO2, and they're all being phased out. Bristol actually won't allow new houses to be built with gas boilers in. They've got to have heat pumps or an alternative heat source. And of course the government's aiming to get rid of them by, now I can't remember the time, but certainly 2050 and possibly earlier. Environmentally benign heaters are all eligible for RHI grant. That's a renewable heat incentive grant. So these technologies, you actually get a grant to help you buy them, or basically to pay you back. We'll get into that later. I thought I'd start off looking at combined heat and power because that's an interesting form of heat. You're not likely to put it in, although you can get micro CHP boilers. They work with this wonderful machine, hot air engine, a Stirling engine, and that's the bottom. I think yes, there's a 3-piston Stirling engine. It's that sort of round cylinder at the bottom. That's an engine that works by having it hot one side and cold the other. And I sort of know how that works, but it's a sort of wizard piece of physics. So what you have is a burner above, which is heating one side of the engine, and the other side of the engine is being cooled by water circulating through. And that water is getting hot, so that's passed around your heating system. The engine that's whizzing round is running a generator, and that's producing power. So it's still using gas. Well, certainly on a micro CHP, it's using gas, but it's doing it much more efficiently. You're getting sort of more for your kilogram of carbon. The small domestic units aren't actually as effective as district heating systems. So that's why it's worth mentioning this, is that if you got together with a whole group of houses and decide to have a sort of community heating system, combined heat and power is a very good option then, and you're not confined to gas because there are solid fuel variations on that. I don't think you can get RHI grant for it. I think you used to, but I think they pulled back from that when they said, oh, wait a minute, you're using gas. So I don't think you can anymore. Next slide. Heat pumps is the main thing that's coming up. And yeah, basically how they work, there's a diagram there. So you can see it's like your refrigerator. It works like your refrigerator, only in reverse. So instead, you're taking heat from outside and putting it inside. And the magic of it is it's drawing this low-grade heat from various sources outside and condensing it, and that's giving off heat, which heats water, and that's circulated around your system, ideally through underfloor pipes, but if that can't be done, then it's done through radiators, fan-assisted radiators, because you're working at a lower temperature. It's typically 35, 40 degrees temperature is the optimum. You can run heat pumps hotter than that, but they start to be less efficient. The efficiency of heat pumps, well, theoretically, you're getting 5 kilowatts of heat for each kilowatt of electricity. In practice, it doesn't sort of work like that. It works from anything from 2.5 kilowatts of heat for a kilowatt of electricity and up to something like 4. Although I've noticed some firms actually claim it does do 5 kilowatts, but anyway, I can't argue about that. I'm not an expert on heat pumps. But that's basically how they work. An air sourced heat pump draws heat from outside air. And I think we saw a photograph of it on the, a few slides back. It's basically oh, there we go. There's one on the top left there. That's the sort of unit you have sitting outside. So that, well, where are we? There we go. that draws heat from the outside air. And obviously there are big fans there to just pull the air through and just keep that circulating, so you don't end up freezing it. It does get frozen sometimes, but it's made to sort of back up and just free that ice off, and then it runs again. They tend to work very well. Ground source heat pump draws heat from the ground. The thing with that is that if you're going to lay pipes in the garden or whatever, you need 5 times the house floor area. Some systems were installed with kind of less than that, and what they found is that the pipes froze up underground progressively. You know, it'd be great the first year, nearly as good the next year, then not very good the third year, and then the pipes would freeze up. And getting them unfrozen is quite an exercise. So they now make sure they put, you know, it's a big area, or they drill a borehole. Expensive. I gather it's about £5,000 to drill the hole into the ground. So, but that is an option. That's then using geothermal in a way as the heat source. And if you've got a stream running through, you could have water source heat pump. There are 1 or 2 about, but quite rare. Any questions about those before I move on? No, great. Okay. Next slide then. Biofuel boilers. These can be wood pellet, wood chip, or logs. Got them the work with logs. You need quite a storage area for the fuel. That's why I thought this would be a good photograph. It shows an installation in somebody's garage. You can see the car next to it. You can see the sort of space. It's a bigger boiler than usual. And you've got to put the sort of pellet that looks like pellets, or have a hopper, it's the other way, which is filled with pellets or wood chips, and then screw fed into the boiler. The whole point, or the whole idea behind biofuel boilers is they burn wood, and basically you're replanting the trees, and the trees just recapture the carbon. So you've got a sort of cycle there, a sort of benign cycle. Of course, it takes about 40 years for the trees to grow back. So there's a little bit of controversy. The resurgence carbon calculator, when you do that, and you say you've got a biofuel boiler, they account for half the carbon emissions that are actually coming out. So they say, you know, we haven't got 40 years for the tree to grow, we've only got 20. So, you know, really you are putting 50% of your CO2 emissions into the air. So slightly disappointing there. Eventually, of course, it will be a benign cycle, but right up front, maybe not so much. I get my pellets from a firm which is basically they do take a lot of forest thinnings. So when you plant a forest, you put a lot more trees in than you need, and about 20 years later, you start taking some of them out and turning them into wood chip or pellets or something. And so that's a 20-year cycle, but you know, I'm splitting hairs there. It's certainly better than oil. It's a large capital cost, but the RHI will cover that extra over 7 years. So the idea is you don't pay any more than you would if you were putting in, say, a replacement oil or gas boiler eventually, but there is the large capital outlay. Wood stoves of all kinds emit nitrous oxide gases depending on how efficiently they're burning. Now, a biofuel boiler does work very efficiently. It's like in the sort of 90% efficiency. But it's a point to think about with wood stoves. It's quite popular in towns and cities to have a sort of wood stove burning away. That can be putting nitrous oxides into the atmosphere. So it's not really suitable in towns and cities. Out in the countryside, you know, there's plenty of air around and you're just getting blown away and lost. And I think that's all I've got to say, isn't it, John? Have I got another slide? Or is it all? Oh, solar thermal. Ah, sorry, yeah, I've forgotten that. Yes, I was doing that, wasn't I? Solar thermal. collector. Sort of less popular because people are putting solar PV units and then they're having a special switch inside so that instead of exporting the electricity is heating up water in the boiler. It's a cunning plan. I still favour solar thermal because it's more efficient. The conversion of sun energy into electricity is at best about 20%. The conversion of sun energy to hot water through a solar panel is like 70%. So it's a much more efficient way of creating the hot water. Solar thermal is the first thing I put on my roof when I had the walls insulated. And I wouldn't, I wouldn't have otherwise. They're a great system. Tubes are tubes are better than flat panel. That's the sort of common understanding, but flat panels have got pretty good as well. The tubes are evacuated tubes, so it's like a long light bulb with an exchange unit inside it, a sort of copper pipe, black painted. Sun heats it up, and there's a little bit of ethylene in the tube, and that evaporates, goes up to the top of the tube and gives its heat up to a manifold where there's water running through. And the great thing about those is they'll work in winter. So a bright sunny day in winter, you're getting quite hot water. In any case, you're getting about 30 degrees. So it's lifting the temperature of the water, to a certain level, and then there's just less heat needed to get it the rest of the way. So that tends to produce more hot water through the year than a flat panel. But as I say, flat panels are getting better, so you'd need to sort of look into that. You'd need a hot water cylinder. In fact, if you've got a hot water cylinder with your central heating, you probably need it changed for a dual coil one. So basically what you have is the solar goes into the bottom coil and your central heating goes into the top coil. So even when you've got the central heating working, if there's a bit of a differential between the bottom of the tank and it's hotter on the roof, then you're getting some solar going into the tank. So that's sort of the efficient way to do it. If you haven't got a cylinder at all, they need to put a cylinder in. So that's not the end of the world. You can do that. But costs, yeah, 2,000 to 6,000. Sorry, you've jumped. Slide. Okay. All right. No, there are just some figures there about saving, what you can expect to save. It isn't huge. It takes a long time to pay back, but I like them. And they're eligible for the RHI scheme. So you get that's a sort of very rough figure. It's about £180 per annum for 7 years, sort of payback on that.